Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we're going to talk a little bit about how the dark side works with this question from Avik P. Shinoy, who asked, "Hey Thor, do you think that Jod uses the dark side of the Force? He's obviously very selfish, but he clearly still has a soft spot for the kids as shown in this episode. He probably could have secured victory if he just killed them, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. This also reminds me of how Baylan Skoll showed honor to Sabine Wren in the Ahsoka show. Do you think Jod and Baylan are examples of characters who are dark side users that occasionally are able to overcome their selfish desire? Characters like this confuse me because I assumed that once someone walks down the dark side, it dominates their destiny, and it's extremely difficult to free yourself from it, as it was for Vader in Return of the Jedi. Love your videos, thanks." Okay, so I think when it comes to Jod Nanawood and Skeleton Crew, that he's just not strong enough with the Force to truly become a dark sider or something like a Sith, or to be entirely corrupted by the dark side. I mean, maybe the potential is or was there for him to become strong with it. A Jedi did take interest in him when he was young and started to train him and all that. But on his own, he never really became much of a Force user. In the show, we just kind of see him doing some pretty basic level stuff with the Force. And thus I don't think he has been, or even necessarily could be, totally consumed by the dark side. Even though, yeah, he does use it, or so we'd assume. He is primarily using the Force for selfish reasons. He's using it for personal gain and all that, which is what the path to the dark side is. In Star Wars, the dark side is basically meant to be the epitome of selfishness, more so than it just being pure evil or malevolence. We don't generally see the bad guys in Star Wars, especially George Lucas Star Wars, who just want to bring about chaos and destruction or anarchy because they can or because they're sadistic and enjoy that sort of thing. In fact, most of the powerful Darksiders we see fully believe in some sort of cause. They believe what they're doing is right and are driven by a desire to bring control to pretty much everything. Well, that and they're ruled by fear. There's always fear at the core of a Darksider, fear that they will lose all this power that they've attained, which is likely where the want for a total control comes from. Control is a way to subside the fear in them, that if I control everything, no one can take away what I have. Again, it's generally not about them wanting to do horrible things for the sake of it, or because they enjoy doing it, which certainly isn't to say they won't. They absolutely will do some pretty awful, awful things to gain or maintain that control, or to destroy a perceived threat. But at the end of the day, they don't want disorder in the galaxy. They want things to be peaceful, actually.
And we shall have peace.
Just as long as they're the ones that control that peace, and their definition of peace is everyone doing exactly what they say they should. Which I think you could argue is kind of the ultimate form or the final form of selfishness. You thinking you know what is best or right for everyone else, literally everyone else, up to the point where you feel you're justified in doing whatever it takes, whatever you have to do to maintain your definition of peace. Enforcing it with an iron fist, eliminating anyone who would dare oppose you in any way, and doing it without hesitation.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
And not to get too off topic, but this all ties right back into why Sith do not or cannot ever get along. They are fully dedicated to themselves, which is the opposite of the Jedi, who are fully dedicated to others. It's interesting how both of them require absolute dedication, but why the dark path is easier, or the easier of the two, is because it's easier to devote your life to yourself than it is to others. It is easier to let yourself be ruled by your emotions and to go after just what you want, than it is to be calm and rational and to help others. It's also then why there needs to be a rule of two with the Sith, why there has to be one with the power and the other to crave it, because when you are that selfish, again the very epitome of it, you're entirely devoted to just yourself, you will never ever ever get along or truly work with or listen to someone else. You will never be able to think of another as being equal to you, and thus why, again, you need a master and an apprentice, though eventually the apprentice is going to think they're greater than you and try to eliminate you. But anyway, getting back to it, when it comes to Jod, why does he seem to care about the kids even though he selfishly uses the Force? Well, again, it's because he's just not strong enough to become a true Darksider or something akin to a Sith, where that way of thinking has fully consumed him. And that goes for pretty much anyone who has some skill with the Force, who has learned to use it to some degree, even if all they do is be selfish and use it for personal gain. It's not like they can, or likely can, ever gain enough power with it to become that afraid and desire control above all else because you just fear losing that power. Though that of course brings us to Balin, who, yeah, is rather powerful with the Force, powerful enough to have once been a Jedi and to have even defeated Ahsoka, and thus is certainly powerful enough to be corrupted by the dark side. So if that is the case, how is he still able to do honorable things when it comes to, say, Sabine? Why does he seem to even be, you could say, almost nostalgic when it comes to his time as a Jedi? Shouldn't he just hate them all and want to see them all dead because they could be a pretty significant threat to him? Or is he not a full Darksider, but rather something else? Is he gray somehow? And first of all, he is absolutely a Darksider, no doubt about it. I know they sort of try to confuse us or maybe imply otherwise with his orange-ish lightsaber and having a more noble air about him. Not unlike Dooku, who also had a more noble air, but also was very much a Sith and willing to do horrible, horrible things in the name of what he deemed to be right. But anyway, Balin sort of proves he is a Darksider in the very first episode of the Ahsoka series, when he doesn't hesitate to start cutting down New Republic officers when they essentially stand in his way, or stop him from getting what he wants, which in that case was Morgan Elsbeth. This is a prime example of, if you're not with me, if you stand in the way of what I have deemed is right or needed, you are my enemy and I will destroy you. However, if they had simply handed Morgan over to him, much like Sabine handed over the map, he likely leaves them alive or keeps his promise to them to leave them alive. Because again, being a Darksider doesn't necessarily make you sadistic or irrational or crazy or something like that. Just look at Palpatine's rise to power. How he played the good guy the whole time. He didn't need to do sadistic things to fulfill some sort of craving. He is the ultimate Darksider, maybe more powerful than any we have seen before, but isn't just totally evil and bloodthirsty or anything like that. He did what he had to do to get power, and he didn't go beyond that. Again, he didn't need to be sadistic, even though, yeah, he does, again, do some pretty horrible, horrible things. I even believe you can, quite likely, hold on to a piece of your old self after you do fall to the dark side. This seems to be the case with Balin and still having some reverence for the Jedi and still having some code of honor, essentially. And no, that's not always going to be the case. I think sometimes, yes, if you are corrupted by the dark side, you may become a bit malevolent or sadistic. I think that is likely to happen to some degree. Anakin is a perfect example of someone whose old self was pretty much completely lost and destroyed by the dark side, or when he fell to it. Though not entirely, since we know Luke was able to bring him back to the light, and yeah, I know what Yoda said in Empire as well.
If once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny, consume you it will!
But I think what he means by that is the more you use the dark side, especially if you're strong with the Force and you get some pretty positive results for yourself by using it, the more it is going to corrupt you, the quicker it is going to corrupt you, and the more difficult it is ever going to be to think beyond the self ever again. I have likened the dark side to drug use before. You believe you can be stronger than it, but in the end, it controls you and your life without you necessarily even realizing it. But it's not impossible to break that addiction, much like it's not impossible to come back from the dark side, but it isn't easy in either case. And when you become that selfish, when you believe so much in yourself and what you're doing, it is going to be really, really hard to ever change that way of thinking, to truly care about someone beyond the self ever again. But yeah, in the end, Anakin does manage to do it. And though, again, he was an extreme example of someone who pretty much lost everything until he remembered himself in the end, I think most of the time you do keep a lot of your old identity, if you will. I think Vader's biggest problem is just how much anger he had inside of him, how much hatred he had. But anyway, I don't think you always will lose, again, every aspect of yourself when you fall to the dark side. Yes, you will do whatever it takes to get what you want, what you think is right, but like I've been saying, I don't think you necessarily just become a cold-blooded killer who starts doing evil acts because you think it's fun. And in the case of Balin keeping Sabine alive and keeping his word, I think that was simply not seeing her as a threat and keeping his word instead of, yeah, just being a killer, because that was kind of the other option. He does stop Shin from killing her, And that's not who he is or necessarily was. I mean, I don't think Balin or most dark side users see themselves as dark side users necessarily. They again see themselves as being right, being better than others and knowing more than others, and that they should have control because they are better and know more than others. Again, it is kind of the ultimate form of selfishness. Well, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about Jod or Balin and how the dark side works. Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. You just start your comment off with Hathor and ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.